Most people do not fail because they are weak. They fail because they stop at the exact moment life was about to change. Inspired by the timeless teachings of Joseph Murphy, this message is for the person standing at the edge of breakthrough and breakdown at the same time. The world celebrates winners, but few talk about the invisible moment where almost everyone quits. The moment of doubt, exhaustion, silence, and uncertainty. That is where destinies are decided. There comes a point in every dream where the mind begins to whisper, maybe this is not for you. Bills increase, energy fades, results disappear, and suddenly, average people walk away from extraordinary futures because the pressure became greater than their belief. But the truth is this: the universe often tests your faith before it rewards your persistence. Tonight, you will understand why most people quit too early, why struggle is often the doorway to transformation, and why the people who master persistence eventually master life itself. The greatest battle most people will ever fight is not with the economy, competition, bad luck, or difficult circumstances. The greatest battle is the silent war taking place inside their own mind. Long before a person physically gives up, mentally walks away, or abandons a dream, the mind has already surrendered. The body simply follows the decision that was secretly made within. This is why two people can face the same obstacle while producing completely different outcomes. One collapses under pressure while the other becomes stronger because the true difference was never the obstacle itself. The difference was the internal conversation happening behind the scenes. The human mind is powerful beyond measurement, but it is also fragile when left undisciplined. Thoughts repeated consistently begin shaping identity. A person who constantly tells themselves they are weak eventually begins acting weak. A person who repeatedly imagines failure starts making decisions from fear instead of faith. The subconscious mind does not carefully analyze every statement. It absorbs emotional repetition and turns it into belief. That belief then influences behavior, habits, energy, confidence, and perception. Many individuals unknowingly destroy their future because they allow temporary emotions to create permanent conclusions. One difficult season convinces them they are incapable. One rejection convinces them they are unworthy. One failure convinces them they should stop trying. The mind is dangerous during moments of emotional pain because it exaggerates problems while minimizing possibilities. It creates illusions that feel permanent even when circumstances are temporary. There are people living far beneath their potential, not because opportunity disappeared, but because their mind quietly accepted defeat years ago. They continue existing physically, but internally they stopped believing expansion was possible. Their dreams became memories. Their ambition became survival. Their confidence slowly dissolved into routine. The tragedy is that many of them still possess extraordinary ability, but their mental environment has become toxic to growth. The mind seeks familiarity more than greatness. Even when a person desires success, the subconscious often resists change because unfamiliarity feels threatening. This is why many people sabotage opportunities without realizing it. Success demands new habits, new responsibilities, new risks, and a new identity. The subconscious mind, programmed by years of limitation, attempts to pull the person back toward comfort and predictability. Fear is one of the mind's strongest weapons against progress. Fear rarely arrives dramatically. It often disguises itself as logic. It says, "Wait until the timing is perfect." It whispers, "Maybe you should be realistic." It convinces people to delay action while secretly keeping them trapped in the same cycle for years. The mind creates convincing excuses whenever growth requires discomfort. Most people believe quitting is a sudden decision, but quitting usually happens gradually. It begins the moment a person stops believing effort will matter. It starts when negative thoughts are repeated daily without resistance. The mind slowly weakens through constant exposure to hopelessness. Eventually, the individual loses emotional energy, not because success became impossible, but because belief disappeared. A person can survive almost any hardship if the mind remains strong. History is filled with individuals who overcame impossible conditions because internally they refused to surrender. At the same time, many people surrounded by comfort still collapse emotionally because their mind has become conditioned toward negativity, fear, and self-doubt. External circumstances influence life, but internal interpretation determines emotional survival. The subconscious mind acts like fertile soil. Whatever is planted repeatedly will eventually grow. If a person constantly plants fear, insecurity, resentment, jealousy, and limitation, those mental seeds eventually dominate behavior. But when belief, discipline, gratitude, resilience, and purpose are planted consistently, a different identity begins emerging. Most people underestimate how deeply their daily thoughts shape their destiny. There are individuals who appear confident externally while internally they are fighting constant mental exhaustion. The world only sees actions, but the real battle is invisible. Some people wake up every morning negotiating with self-doubt before they even leave bed. Others smile publicly while secretly questioning their worth. The mind can become a prison when negative thinking is left unchallenged long enough. One of the most destructive habits is allowing external circumstances to dictate internal belief. When life becomes difficult, many people immediately reduce their expectations for themselves. Financial hardship makes them believe abundance is impossible. Rejection makes them believe they are unlovable. Failure makes them believe they are incapable. They begin defining identity through temporary experiences rather than inner potential. The mind also becomes weaker when comparison dominates daily thinking. Modern society trains people to constantly measure themselves against others. They compare income, appearance, achievements, lifestyles, and timelines. This creates emotional instability because comparison shifts focus away from personal growth toward external validation. The subconscious mind absorbs feelings of inadequacy every time comparison becomes habitual. Most people do not realize how much energy negative thinking consumes. Fear drains creativity. Doubt destroys momentum. Anxiety weakens focus. Overthinking creates paralysis. A distracted mind struggles to build anything meaningful because mental chaos interrupts consistent action. The person may physically work hard, but internally their energy remains divided between belief and fear. There comes a point where a person must stop trusting every thought that enters the mind. Not every thought deserves attention. Not every fear deserves belief. The mind often produces exaggerated worst-case scenarios designed to protect comfort zones. If a person obeys every fearful thought, growth becomes impossible. Emotional maturity begins when someone learns to observe negative thoughts without automatically surrendering to them. Many individuals spend years waiting for confidence before taking action, not understanding that confidence is often created through action itself. The mind gains strength through evidence produced by repeated courage. Every time a person acts despite fear, the subconscious receives a new message. Survival is possible beyond comfort. Gradually, the mind becomes less controlled by uncertainty. There are moments where the mind attempts to convince a person to stop simply because progress is invisible. Human beings crave immediate reward. When effort does not quickly produce visible outcomes, discouragement appears. But some of the most important transformations happen beneath the surface first. Discipline develops quietly. Patience deepens silently. Emotional endurance expands invisibly. The subconscious is being reshaped long before external success appears. A weak mind searches for escape when difficulty arrives. A trained mind searches for meaning. This difference changes everything. One person views hardship as proof life is against them. Another interprets hardship as preparation for expansion. The circumstances may be identical, but interpretation determines emotional response. The mind has the power to transform suffering into growth or turn temporary struggle into permanent defeat. There are people whose entire future changed because they learned to control internal dialogue. Instead of repeating, "I cannot," they began asking, "What if I can?" Instead of obsessing over limitations, they focused on possibility. Instead of feeding fear daily, they deliberately strengthened belief. Small mental shifts repeated consistently eventually created massive external transformation. The mind is deeply influenced by repetition. Whatever a person repeatedly exposes themselves to becomes normalized internally. Constant negativity programs fear. Constant limitation programs insecurity. Constant distraction weakens focus. This is why environment matters profoundly. Conversations, media, relationships, habits, and daily routines all shape subconscious conditioning. Many people are unknowingly surrounded by influences that weaken their mental resilience every day. Emotional exhaustion often begins mentally long before it becomes physical. The mind tires itself through endless worry about the future, regret about the past, and fear about situations that may never happen. Overthinking creates suffering independent of reality. A person can physically sit in safety while mentally experiencing constant crisis because the mind refuses stillness. The individuals who rise above average thinking develop emotional discipline. They refuse to allow temporary emotions to control permanent decisions. They understand feelings change constantly, but purpose must remain stable. Some days motivation disappears completely, yet disciplined thinking keeps them moving forward. They learn to separate emotional weather from long-term vision. There are hidden consequences to constantly speaking negatively about oneself. Words carry psychological influence. Statements repeated emotionally become internal truths over time. Saying, "I always fail," "nothing works for me," or "I am unlucky" may seem harmless temporarily, but the subconscious absorbs these declarations as identity. Eventually, behavior unconsciously aligns with those beliefs. The mind also quits when people become addicted to certainty. Growth always contains unknown variables. Every dream requires entering territory without guarantees. But many individuals remain trapped in mediocre situations because uncertainty terrifies them more than dissatisfaction. They prefer familiar misery over unfamiliar possibility because the mind prioritizes predictability. Some of the strongest people in the world are not physically powerful. They are mentally resilient. They have trained themselves to remain calm during chaos, focused during uncertainty, and hopeful during delay. Mental strength is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear control direction. The subconscious mind responds strongly to imagination. When people constantly visualize failure, embarrassment, rejection, and catastrophe, the body reacts emotionally as if those events are already real. Anxiety increases. Confidence weakens. Action decreases. But imagination can also become a tool for empowerment. Visualizing growth, success, resilience, and possibility conditions the mind toward expansion rather than limitation. Most individuals underestimate how important inner language becomes during hard seasons. The voice inside the mind eventually becomes either a prison guard or a source of strength. A destructive internal voice destroys confidence slowly over time. A disciplined internal voice strengthens resilience during adversity. There are people who appear stuck externally, but their true limitation is internal belief. Opportunity can exist directly in front of them while the mind remains conditioned toward failure. Until belief changes, action remains inconsistent. Until internal identity expands, external results rarely sustain themselves. The person who masters their mind gains an advantage greater than talent, intelligence, or luck, because once the mind refuses to surrender, persistence becomes natural. Obstacles lose psychological power. Delays stop creating panic. Failure becomes instruction instead of identity. The individual develops emotional stability independent of temporary circumstances. The mind quits before destiny does because destiny continues waiting long after fear says stop. Potential remains alive even when confidence disappears temporarily. Possibility still exists during seasons of doubt, but many people never witness what their life could become because they obey the fearful voice inside their head instead of the deeper voice calling them toward growth. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid failure, not realizing that failure is often the very thing shaping them into someone stronger, wiser, and more capable than they were before. Society teaches people to fear mistakes as if every setback is proof of weakness. From childhood, many are conditioned to believe that losing means they are not good enough, smart enough, talented enough, or worthy enough. Because of this conditioning, millions of people abandon their dreams the moment life becomes difficult. They do not understand that temporary failure is not the opposite of success. In many cases, it is the hidden pathway leading directly toward it. There is a dangerous illusion in modern culture that successful people move through life without defeat. People see the victory, but rarely witness the years of disappointment that created it. They admire confidence without understanding the insecurity that existed before it. They celebrate achievement without seeing the endless failures that built the foundation underneath it. Every powerful person carries a history of setbacks that forced them to grow beyond their limitations. Failure has a unique ability to reveal truths that comfort never exposes. Success can sometimes inflate ego, but failure forces honesty. It reveals weak habits, emotional immaturity, poor decisions, impatience, lack of preparation, and hidden fears. The person willing to learn from failure gains knowledge that cannot be taught through easy victories. Pain creates awareness. Struggle sharpens perception. Difficult seasons force deeper reflection. Many people think failure destroys confidence, but the truth is that avoiding failure destroys confidence far more. A person who constantly avoids risk never develops proof of resilience. They remain emotionally fragile because they have never tested their ability to recover. Real confidence is not built through perfect outcomes. It is built through surviving difficult experiences and realizing you can still continue afterward. Temporary failure often arrives because life is attempting to prepare a person for responsibilities they are not yet ready to handle. People pray for success, wealth, influence, opportunity, and transformation, but they underestimate the emotional maturity required to sustain those things. Failure becomes a training ground where patience, discipline, humility, endurance, and wisdom are developed internally before larger opportunities appear externally. There are people who failed so many times that the world expected them to disappear completely, yet those repeated failures became the exact reason they eventually became unstoppable. Every rejection strengthened emotional endurance. Every disappointment deepened resilience. Every obstacle increased adaptability. While others collapsed under pressure, they slowly developed an inner strength that could not be shaken easily anymore. Failure becomes dangerous only when a person turns it into identity instead of instruction. There is a massive difference between failing at something and believing you are a failure as a person. One is an event, the other is a psychological prison. Temporary setbacks are natural in growth, but many individuals emotionally attach themselves to failure and allow one difficult season to define their entire future. The human mind tends to magnify embarrassment after failure. People become terrified of judgment. They fear what others will think if they struggle publicly. Because of this fear, many stop trying entirely. Yet the reality is that most successful individuals experienced public humiliation long before recognition arrived. Failure humbled them, refined them, and forced them to rebuild stronger foundations internally. There are lessons hidden inside failure that success could never teach. Failure teaches emotional control because panic only makes situations worse. Failure teaches adaptability because rigid thinking collapses under pressure. Failure teaches patience because meaningful growth rarely happens instantly. Failure teaches humility because ego cannot survive repeated disappointment forever. Some people become bitter after setbacks because they interpret hardship as punishment. Others become wiser because they interpret hardship as preparation. The difference lies in perspective. Two individuals can experience the same defeat while producing completely different futures. One emotionally collapses and quits. The other studies the failure, adjusts strategy, strengthens mentality, and returns stronger. Temporary failure strips away illusion. It forces people to confront reality honestly. Many individuals overestimate their discipline until struggle arrives. Others believe they are mentally strong until pressure exposes emotional instability. Failure acts like a mirror reflecting weaknesses that comfort kept hidden. This reflection becomes painful, but pain often precedes transformation. The strongest people are rarely those who avoided failure. They are usually the ones who survived it repeatedly without allowing it to destroy their spirit. There is something powerful that happens when a person realizes they can endure disappointment and still continue moving forward. Fear loses control little by little. Emotional resilience increases. The mind stops panicking during uncertainty because it has already survived difficult seasons before. Most people only see failure externally, but some of the most important growth during failure happens invisibly inside the person. Character deepens quietly. Perspective changes silently. Priorities become clearer. Emotional intelligence expands. Pain often forces people to evolve mentally in ways success never would have demanded. There are moments where failure becomes necessary because a person's current mindset cannot sustain the future they desire. Sometimes arrogance must break before wisdom can emerge. Sometimes impatience must collapse before discipline develops. Sometimes dependency on external validation must disappear before self-belief becomes genuine. Failure destroys illusions that would eventually become dangerous later. One of the greatest mistakes people make is assuming successful individuals never doubted themselves. In reality, many high achievers experienced moments where they questioned everything. They felt exhausted. They considered quitting. They faced rejection so painful that continuing seemed irrational. yet they discovered something important during those seasons. Emotions are temporary, but surrender creates permanent consequences. Failure often isolates people emotionally because society celebrates achievement more than perseverance. Friends disappear when results vanish. Support fades when progress slows down. Recognition becomes silence. These moments reveal who genuinely believes in the journey and who was only attracted to visible success. Isolation during failure becomes emotionally painful, but it also builds independence and self-reliance. Temporary failure can become one of the greatest psychological advantages if handled correctly. A person who survives repeated setbacks develops emotional endurance others lack. They become calmer during chaos because adversity no longer feels unfamiliar. They stop expecting life to be easy and instead focus on becoming stronger internally. Many individuals sabotage their own future because they expect immediate perfection. They assume that one mistake means they should stop completely. But mastery has always required repeated correction. Every expert was once inexperienced. Every confident person was once uncertain. Every successful individual once struggled privately while learning skills the world later admired publicly. Failure removes superficial confidence and replaces it with something deeper. Shallow confidence depends on easy success and external praise. Deep confidence comes from surviving difficult seasons and discovering inner strength that cannot be easily shaken. This type of confidence becomes stable because it is rooted in experience rather than appearance. There are people whose greatest breakthrough happened immediately after their greatest disappointment. The reason is simple: failure forced them to evolve. It forced them to think differently, work differently, manage emotions differently, and approach life with greater wisdom. The setback became the catalyst for transformation. Pain changes perspective in ways comfort never can. During failure, people begin questioning habits, relationships, priorities, and beliefs. They become more reflective, more aware, more intentional. Temporary failure often interrupts destructive patterns that would have quietly continued if life remained comfortable. The world often misunderstands persistence. Persistence is not pretending failure does not hurt. It is feeling disappointment fully while refusing to let it permanently define direction. Strong people still experience fear, sadness, frustration, and doubt. The difference is that they continue acting despite those emotions instead of surrendering to them completely. Many people ask for strength while avoiding every situation capable of producing it. But strength is developed through resistance. Emotional endurance grows through hardship. Mental resilience expands through repeated recovery after setbacks. Just as muscles strengthen through resistance, character strengthens through adversity. Failure also reveals the true motivations behind goals. Some individuals chase dreams only for validation, status, or approval. When failure removes praise and recognition, motivation disappears completely. Others continue because their purpose runs deeper than public applause. Temporary failure exposes whether ambition is rooted in ego or genuine conviction. There are moments where failure protects people from futures they are not prepared for yet. Immediate success without maturity can become destructive. Rapid achievement without emotional discipline often leads to collapse later. Failure slows people down long enough for wisdom to develop alongside ambition. People who never experience hardship often become emotionally fragile because they have not built resilience. Small problems overwhelm them because they lack psychological endurance. But individuals who survive difficult seasons repeatedly develop emotional stability. that allows them to remain focused even during uncertainty. Temporary failure teaches patience in a world addicted to instant gratification. Modern culture conditions people to expect rapid results, immediate recognition, and constant progress. But meaningful transformation rarely happens quickly. Failure forces individuals to develop endurance for long-term growth instead of emotional dependence on short-term rewards. There is hidden power in learning how to recover after disappointment. Recovery strengthens identity. It proves to the subconscious mind that setbacks are survivable. Each recovery increases courage little by little. Eventually, the person no longer fears failure the way they once did because experience has shown them they can rise again. Failure becomes transformative when people stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" That single shift changes emotional response completely. Instead of becoming victims of hardship, individuals become students of growth. The strongest version of a person is rarely created during easy seasons. Comfort does not demand expansion. Ease does not force evolution. Difficulty pushes people beyond familiar limits. Temporary failure becomes the pressure that shapes deeper resilience, greater wisdom, stronger discipline, and unshakable endurance. Some individuals spend years trying to erase their failures from memory, unaware that those painful experiences contain the very lessons responsible for their growth. Every setback contributed something valuable. Every disappointment built emotional muscle. Every difficult season forced inner development that comfort would never have created. Temporary failure creates permanent strength because pain changes people permanently when faced with courage instead of surrender. The individual who survives enough storms eventually develops a calmness, resilience, and inner certainty that cannot be easily broken by temporary setbacks anymore.